we go. Hello, this is, I'm Gwyn GB.
I'm Kelly Clayton.
And we are two-thirds of the Blonde Plotters. We are missing one. So we have a surrogate who's going to sit in, who was half asleep, and now she's saying, what on earth are you going on about, Mum? So we're just waiting for our third arm, who is Deb Carr, who's having some technical difficulties, as they say.
Absolutely. But we always used to we did call Molly the fourth Blonde Plotter anyway. So I think it's only appropriate.
But she was asleep, and she does look a bit sleepy now and a bit reluctant to do any talking, but never mind. Okay. We'll carry on as we are.
Okay.
So let's say who we are first. So there's three of us, usually, with Molly, and we are the Blonde Plotters. Basically, we're all three writers. I'm Gwyn GB. I write crime fiction, mysteries, and also I do women's fiction as well. And I hand you over now to
Kelly. Hi, so Kelly Clayton. I write contemporary crime thrillers, but I also write historical as well, but again with a sort of mystery and crime running through it. So shall we talk for our missing friend?
I'm Deborah Carr. I'm a USA Today best-selling author of mostly romance, but I've also written some crime thrillers too.
Yes, and under different names as well. So Debs at one point had so many different pen names we couldn't quite work out who she was. But I think the story with us is that we it's been about 5-6 years. Is it?
Yeah, easily 6 years. Yeah.
I
know we've lost track of time with the pandemic.
I know.
We've lost at least a year somewhere on the line.
Absolutely. And I think you knew Debs anyway from and we all live in Jersey and the Channel Islands.
Yeah, so I knew her through social media initially, and then I set up a writing group.
Yeah, and how that
connected.
And then I basically started writing and I was stalking Debs because what happened was I put Jersey writers into Google, and I love Google, and it came up with Deborah Carr. So I thought, oh. So I went onto her Facebook page, and it was really funny because I think she was trying to hide herself at first because she always had photographs where she was like, and you couldn't quite see her, only the book.
She's probably still working full time at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
People work in the finance industry here, and so kind of like aren't so sure they should be
keep it quiet. And then we went to the author Rachel Arbor, who lives in Alderney, one of the other Channel Islands. She'd come to Jersey, and she was doing it was like a full day sort of indie publishing writing course, and it was at the Digital Hub where Gwen
was organised by us, the writers group.
Yeah, and so Gwen was there, and then sort of at the end of it, I recognised Debs from stalking her online. So went and introduced myself and said, oh, we must go for a coffee. And then it's really, really funny because the other day she was saying, oh, Lord, she said, I went home and she said to her mother and her husband, this strange woman approached me and asked me if I wanted to go for a coffee. And they said, oh, look, just go. You never know. Anyway, we got on really well. And then through some other writing things, we got involved with Gwen, and we went for a pizza one night, and basically by the end of it we had the name The Blonde Plotters, we came home, we had a website, we had the Facebook group,
everything. I know within like literally about 2 hours of leaving the thing. It was Deb's suggestion actually, because she'd seen some other authors. But I mean, basically being an author is quite a lonely business. You tend to sit alone. You want to be alone most of the time because you need to concentrate. And so it was just brilliant just to meet up with. We just all got on, didn't we? It was just really fun. So we wanted to sort of support each other in our writing careers, and then from there, obviously, friendships as well develop properly.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I often sort of say to people, if someone had said to me, I think just sort of turned 50 the year before, and if someone had told me when I was 50 I would meet two women and strike up such a close friendship, I'd have thought that was impossible because we all have, so many other things we're doing in our life. But then again, if you think through this, I think, and we Facebook every day, and I think that is something in today's world that really bonds people, because, you know, an example here, you know, is Sam and Caroline, you know, who've met online.
I was going to say exactly the same thing through the UK Crime Book Club,
who've become massive friends through that. And I think that, you know, that sort of helped to, you know, we have a Facebook message thread under the Blonde Plotter, though I do change the name every now and again of what it's called, depending what's going on in our lives. And I always say, so that goes back to the day we first started talking and we met. And I've always said, oh my goodness, if that ever got printed out and put in a book.
We've murdered so many people in that thread, you wouldn't believe it. Honestly, we plotted out an entire book, didn't we, at one point? We were going to write together about murdering, I won't say whose boss, because that might give it away, but one of our bosses, not mine, just in case somebody's watching, but no. And yeah, so I think, well, that's one thing we're going to say actually is are we ever going to sit down and write a book together? I think that's kind of one of the big questions that we talked about, didn't we?
We did, and actually I remember we started thinking about that. But when we first met, what we used to do was, obviously we'd Facebook all the time, but we used to have a physical meeting every sort of, you know, 3-4 weeks. And we'd treat it very business-like. You know, we'd go to the digital hub and we'd have our laptops and everything with us. And we literally would sit some days and we would gab for 2 hours, and then we go.
You missed an important part.
I was going to say
the very first part of that meeting, which we always did religiously. We would play a clip of Tom Hardy to get us going
from Taboo, and the whole week. That no matter how stressful the weeks were, they just, it's fine. We're together. We can talk.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we've had great fun, but I think the really, you know, sort of serious part of it is we understand, you know, what each other is going through. And I think
finding a tribe, isn't it? It's that whole thing. It's like I say to my kids when they have friends, etc. It's about finding your tribe. It's like being the UK Crime Book Club, where you're with people who enjoy the same things as you. You can chat about the same things. It is your tribe, effectively.
Yeah, and I think it's like that, you know, overall connection. And also, I think, you know, I mean, the one thing is, you know, Gwen is not only is Gwen a journalist, you know, mainstream broadcaster. She's even been in a movie, but she's so good in the digital world. And honestly, what she has had to put up with Debs and I over time is really, really fun.
Oh no, rubbish. You're all fine. It's a question of learning new things, that's all.
I know, but the best thing you ever taught me was just Google everything.
Oh god, yeah. All the top developers in the world, that's all they do is that when they come across a problem, they just Google it and find somebody that's already found a solution.
Absolutely, and straight into it. And I think that, you know, so that sort of glue is there because it means as well that I guess the highs and the lows of writing, and also, you know, writing, publishing, it's such a fast changing world now. You know, the technological advancements and changes to how things have done. I guess you're taking something that pretty much hadn't changed probably for hundreds of years, to a really, really fast-paced, you know, change. And I guess, you know, what works today isn't what worked 2 years ago. Sometimes might not even be what worked 3 or 4 months ago.
The industry's changed tremendously. Absolutely, it really has changed.
And I think we've got those. I guess it's, you know, it's sharing that information, you know, as well. Mm-hmm. Having someone who can think, well, actually, oh gosh, they've gone through that. I could do that as well, or actually, I can't, that's not for me. It'll be another path for me, because I think, you know, family, friends, wonderful, but they don't understand.
They don't get it. They don't get it.
Yeah.
They just don't.
I think that's like anything, though, isn't it? You know, they really, really don't, you know, sort of get those in-depth challenges. And I guess we're all doing sort of different things, you know, in different ways. Gwen basically is a writing machine. We used to go and have these sort of meetings every 2 or 3 weeks. And in one meeting, Gwen would be going, oh, I don't know what to do. I've only done 6,000 words and I have to get this finished soon. And I'd be saying, oh, I've done 16,000, and maybe Debs had done, you know, 20,000. And then we'd meet in 2 or 3 weeks, and Debs and I would have done a few thousand, you know, words each. And Gwen, who'd been at sort of 6,000, would go, oh, I'm only at 38,000 words now. And I'm thinking, how did you do that?
Okay, I mean, I think the really key thing with anything like that, and there's an awful lot of comparisonitis that goes on with writers, and some people can write really fast, some people can't, and there's some days where I can't write. I squeeze it out of me. You have an incredibly busy day job with lots of responsibility. I'm now a full-time writer. I don't just write fiction. I also still do some non-fiction writing, but I'm full-time sort of freelance doing my writing. Debs is full-time writing. So it's a lot easier for us now to focus, whereas for you, it's really hard. And I think that most authors start that way. I mean, I certainly did, and Debs did with other jobs. And I think one of the things that if there's anybody listening who is thinking about writing, you can read all the kind of the tips and the recommendations about how to kind of, you know, get on with writing, but at the end of the day, you've got to fit it around your life. Everybody's life circumstances are different, so you shouldn't be hard on yourself. You just do what you can do that fits in with what time you have.
And also, I think it's the there's no blueprint that says, you know, if you must have done something by 20 or 30. You know, that it's very much about individuals. And I think what we're actually seeing a lot of is a lot of writers, people who've maybe, you know, sort of written over time, etc., you know, little bits and pieces here and there. But as they've got older, for whatever reason, have either found perhaps more of the burning desire to do it, or the time, actually had a bit more time, you know, to do it, or had some catalyst that made them think. So I suppose, I guess with you, so you've always been in that sort of world, you know.
I've always been a writer, yeah.
You know, journalist, broadcaster, you know, writing your own broadcast and actually presenting it. What made you sit and say, and obviously you've had, you know, completed manuscripts hidden in the drawer that will never see, you know, the light of day, but what made you think, this is it, I'm going to go for this?
I'd always wanted to be a writer. I was a classic child that wrote stories and books when I was little, and I kind of went to my parents when I was about 8 years old and said, what can I kind of recognise that you can't be a writer straight away, you need to live a little bit. And I said to them, what can I do before I become a writer? And they said, become a journalist. I said, okay, then I'll go be a journalist, which I did. But I think you kind of get to our age and you're thinking, I keep on chasing the dollar and keep on, I mean, obviously I've got kids, we have to put kids through school and university, we have to pay the bills, you know, so it's really difficult to juggle the pressures of what you would like to be doing and the pressures of what reality is, which is paying the bills and everything. But I just kind of got to that point where I thought, well, you know, I could be dead next month for all I know. It's about time I just did what I want to do. I never want to have regrets. I never want to say, I wish I'd done something. So yeah, I just thought I've just got to go for it, hell for leather, and you know.
But because you're very you really, you have it planned. You have a plan there. I know sometimes you might say you don't know how you get from one bit to the other, but you do look all your research.
Oh, you know, well, I used to be much more of a plotter than I am now, actually. And I think, and I would say to anybody who's a beginner writer, to plot more. Do you plot? Do you plot? Do you tend
I start off with a picture, and so I actually draw a picture.
You draw a picture, right? Okay.
Yeah. So I draw a picture with boxes, and if it was, let's say it's a historical murder mystery, right? So there's going to be a romance element. So I'll have those people, and then I'll think, okay, what happens that they get involved in? And then I start, and even if it was a modern one, I'm doing that. I'm drawing, that's a victim, who are they connected to, who's going to
mind map.
Yeah.
I do that kind of mind mappy thing, but I'm rubbish at drawing, so I kind of
connect
pictures.
And then I suppose I'll have like, okay, from that I can say, right, okay, these are the people, this is the world they're in, this is the world and the people. this is what happens, maybe not all of what happens, and this is the person who does it. So in some ways, as soon as I write the first scene, I could write the last scene because I know what happens to the
absolutely. I always know the ending. Yeah.
And then for me, I have those big points where I think these things have to happen to move it on. And so those ideas are sort of that size, and then it just enlarges out. And I love those times, and we've spoken about this before, when you think, okay, this is going to happen and I'm going to get to there. And then suddenly, from somewhere else, you think, oh, hello, I didn't expect that. And you go on this completely different direction.
It's great. It's almost like the characters take over, isn't it? Which
and they become who they're meant to be. And I know
do you start with story or do you start with character? Because do you sort of see somebody in your head? Because I very clearly saw Harrison in my head. Lead character of my current series that I'm writing.
It varies for me. I mean, I think you there had a really strong character who we had all known about, as three of us, born plotters, and been thinking about for some time before you were then writing, that book, because he was from a screenplay originally, wasn't he?
Yes, so I was doing a lot of screenwriting. So he was originally a television series, which the funny thing being is everybody keeps saying to me now, oh, it should be a TV series. It's such a TV series. Well, that's what he was.
Yeah. So I suppose for me it kind of differs, because with the first Leclerc, Blood in the Sand, that the idea originally for that came about because I was just literally, because my husband and I, we don't have children, and I just thought, we work so hard to build up this life and we don't have anyone to leave anything to. And it's quite strange sometimes, I'm not particularly sentimental about things, but you'll look at something and you'll think, that's just going to end up in the rubbish one day, So before it all ends, we'll have to have a big clear out. And then I started thinking about, what if one of us was left on our own? What would happen, to those assets? And that was the start of the premise for, Blood in the Sand, and how the people came together in that. And I suppose with others I'm thinking through, I think I get the situation, but then I get a really strong person who's my person. There'll be lots of that. They're the one who.
I think the best stories are character driven, because I think you, as a reader, I mean, obviously, we're first and foremost readers. A great story, absolutely, but you've got to invest in the characters, and if you don't believe the characters and you don't believe they're real enough, it just doesn't carry you. Even a great story doesn't carry you if they're 2D characters. So,
and I think if you've got really, really amazing characters, other things can be forgiven. I mean, I told you before, I started reading a book. It was a book in a series, and there were parts of it I didn't quite like, but actually the character was so amazing. I downloaded all the books over a weekend, and I thought, I couldn't care less. I just want to know what happens next, to this guy. And that's it, isn't it? What happens next?
Yeah, you care about them.
I saw something on Facebook the other day, and it was amazing. It was saying, and I thought it really sums it up. And it was someone saying, do you ever get that feeling, and maybe it's a standalone book or it's the last of a series, and you close that book and you finished it, and you feel an unbearable sadness.
Oh yeah, I do, absolutely.
You'll never know what else happens to you. You'll never ever know.
No, I do. I do that. I mean, that you can always tell you've read a good book when you have that sadness that you've finished it. That you just want more, and that's a good. That's what we all strive for as authors, is to create that emotion in readers that they want more books, but you just want people to want to read more and more about the characters and stories.
I mean, for you, you've created Harrison is a fabulous character, and you've written those books quite quickly. So how long? How many?
So I'm currently on the 5th book. She says, thinking, because I've just done the cover for the 6th one, so I'm getting confused. I'm currently just finishing off the 5th book. So I started writing them last year, but what happened was my original editor got COVID back when COVID had no vaccines, and she was very, very, very poorly. And I kept hanging on, and I ended up waiting 6 months for her to get well. And she just wasn't well enough. So we kind of agreed that I needed to pass it on to a different editor. But that had set me back a bit.
Yeah.
But because I was kind of waiting for somebody to go through it. It's really hard when you're writing. You wait for some kind of validation, don't you? And the validation is from your readers, but the first validation is from your editor. We all kind of write these books that we think are hopefully great. You put them out there and you think, oh my God, no, it's absolutely rubbish.
And you have the fear.
Everyone's going to think it's crap. Sorry, Molly, do you want to go down and go to bed? You were supposed to be Debs. You're our Deb standing. So Deb's to go. Say bye to everybody so you can go to bed. Yes.
Oh,
yeah, I think it's really, really, really hard to get that validation. So I'd been waiting for this editor to give me sort of some feedback so I could then write the others. So it slowed me down. So then I had to write really fast, which is a little bit difficult when you've got other things to be doing as well. But yeah, 5 books this year. And I also rewrote 2 other books. So I've got another series out as well, which I've done the first 2 of, and I've got to do a third of for early next year. So yeah.
Wow.
But what are you up to at the moment? You're writing. We keep waiting for something from you recently.
I know.
When's it coming?
I think, for me, it's my problem has always been having too many ideas. And I need to corral myself and really just.
It's what you're passionate about. We always say this to you whenever we meet up. You talk passionately about. There's a certain witchy story that we won't go into detail about, and also you have spoken about the historical crime one as well.
Yeah.
And you get very passionate about those stories, far more passionate than you do about some of the other things you've written. So.
Yeah.
You should write what you're passionate about. You should
to me.
Page.
Yeah, I think as well. It's like right now I'm virtually there with the historical, which is the second one after Fortune's Hostage. So I'm just about ready to sort of tie that up and then go back to the beginning again and go back through it. I think after that, I'm toying with doing either the Theft Leclerc, because I'm kind of nearly there with it as well. But then I want to write the Witches' Gates, and that's completely different. See, as a reader, I read so many different genres.
And not only do you read so many different genres, madam, you read so bloody fast. I've never known anybody that reads as fast as you. I send across my latest Harrison book to you, and you've read it within like 3 hours or something ridiculous.
Well, do you know what's really funny as well? Like I'm a really good focuser. So, for example, I had to. I've been off the last couple of days, and I was doing some writing. My mother-in-law was on the phone, and we're having our stairs redone, and there's all this noise and banging and drills and everything. And she's gone, "Oh, that's terrible. Do you want to come to my house and do it?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I don't hear it."
Yeah.
How can you not hear it? And I don't. I focus on. There's nothing there. It's just background. So I think that. That focus, then when I start reading something, I'm in it. If I'm in that story, I can't stop. I can't stop. I will just keep going until it's done. So that shows you. I think when you sent me the first Harrison, it was a Saturday, and I started reading it, and then I was raging because I had to drive my husband into town because he was going out with a friend for dinner. So I got him in there as quick as I could, got back into it. And then it was about 2 hours later, I found you going, oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. That's so great. Yeah.
I think so. So for me, writing, I suppose, as well, is that I love reading those different genres. And, so whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, crime, whether it's, straightforward, literature. And also, I don't, I saw someone on Facebook the other day saying, "Oh, I never read a book that's been written before 2018 or something like that." And I thought, what? It doesn't matter. You could read something that's 40 years old, 50 years old, 100 years old. It's the story. So I think sometimes how we are as a reader can then impact what we want to, what we want to write as well.
And I think it's also really, well, Leslie says she likes a good witch story. Oh, thank you, Leslie. She says the Harrison books are getting better and better, which is great. I've just seen some messages on Facebook, on the Facebook feed. I think it's always important to remember as well, actually, that we don't all like the same books. So I always remember you getting so mega excited about this book and going on to me and Dev, like, oh, you got to read this book. And we both read it and we both went.
And yeah, I read this book. I literally.
You absolutely loved it. I know.
I had the Kindle propped up on the counter on the Sunday morning while I was making breakfast because I was still reading it. And then I was trying to do that. And then I ended up crying so much I couldn't even see the words. I had to stop and go back in. And I was like, oh my goodness, you've got to read this. And you were like, yeah.
Wasn't my cup of tea, love. But I mean, that's the whole point there. But that's what's great. I mean, it's like anything about in the world, isn't it? I always say it to my son, if we were all the same, it would be so bloody dull, wouldn't it? So it's great that we all like different things. And you get one person who reads your book and they're absolutely raving about it and thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread or whatever else. But obviously I'm gluten free, so I wouldn't like sliced bread. But and then you get somebody else who absolutely hates it.
And also it's different things, I've got like reviews that go, oh my God, I hated this and there was far too much description about this island. And then the next one will say, well, this was ridiculous. There wasn't enough description.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And that's it.
You can't please everybody all the time, and that's what you have to learn as an author.
You're right. That just exemplified it. We are the same as readers. We all like different things, and I think once you accept that, it's like, do you know what? We all like different things. It's some people will love it, some people won't. Some people like different things, but it's when you first put that out into the world every single time, and it's every single time.
Oh, and it's you see the most seasoned authors, but they still have that same moment where it kind of goes out and they wait for the reaction, and you always will do. And I think readers don't always understand that. I think they can be quite kind of not harsh, but that understanding that you've been with this book for however long you've been with it, sometimes years in some cases. There's one book I wrote which it took me years to write, and it can come from really deep down inside, and it's quite raw to put it out there. It's almost like kind of opening yourself up to running around naked in the street or something, and waiting for people to ridicule you. It's a bizarre feeling at times.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's addictive. It's, and then I suppose it's thinking about, I was thinking the other day and I thought, if I was writing and someone had said to me, if you were writing and it was just for you, would you still do it? And I said, well, that's what I've done for 30 odd years, whether it's, I used to travel a lot on business, and I used to love, I'd be having a meal on my own somewhere, and I used to love, some different part of the world, just watching people, and thinking, or you'd overhear a conversation at the next table and they'd say something, and before you know it, your head is completely gone.
Oh, absolutely. I love sitting in cafes and earwigging people.
And making up those stories of why did that happen and where were they going and what were they doing. And I think that natural, sort of curiosity for life and people is something sometimes I think.
Why as crime writers do we want to keep killing everybody then?
Do you know, they've done, I'll tell you this, the only reason I started writing crime was because of my friend Claire, who is so bloodthirsty, it's unbelievable. We shared, as in our 20s and that, we shared flats for years, and she was always had true crime on the TV, or, the serial killer books and everything. And Claire got really ill. She got taken to the UK. Because Jersey can't handle those kind of things that really need specialised treatment, and she's absolutely fine now. And I went to visit her, and I would have done anything for her at this point. And she said, "Oh, could you read me some of your stories?" And I was like, "Oh my God, my husband, no, when I'd never. It was all inside me, Oh God." So I thought, okay. So I started reading one that actually was kind of like a romance. And she said, oh, I like the sound of that one. She said, it's a shame there's no crime in it. And I thought, I can do crime. I can do it. I'll do that for you.
Have somebody.
Just build someone straight off. And I like, and then I realised what I used to love things like Agatha Christie and that, where I loved that moment of reading when you've had all the clues and it's that one.
It's a whodunit type thing, isn't it?
It's that one. And then you get to the end and you find out who it was and you go, what? And then you go, oh, of course. And everything falls into place. And I love doing that. And I like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle then, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I love the Sherlock Holmes books. I mean, that was the kind of, after I'd graduated from fairy stories as a child, Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie were my next ports of call. And I think that's, Sherlock has kind of, in a sense, fed into Harrison slightly, but obviously Harrison's got some very unique skills, which Sherlock didn't have. But yeah, I think, you know, when you say that somebody said that they hadn't read books, they don't like reading books before a certain period. I mean, I can understand that people want to perhaps have books set in the modern world so they can relate to it, perhaps. But at the end of the day, we're all products of past generations as well, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, builds up to it. And I think that, you know, what you've, you know, it's writing series as well, because I guess the interesting thing, you know, with writing a series is something needs to happen, something needs to move on. You know, there needs to be an arc, you know, within that. And I have to tell you what is driving me insane is you write so quick, but you don't write quick enough, because I am desperate to know what happens in the next Harrison, because you're bringing him, he's coming from the UK to Jersey.
He is. He's landed in Jersey already. He's on the island. Yeah. So I've got an overarching arc story as well as the individual stories in the book.
And do we get a bit more of it in this one?
You always get a little bit. Certain books you get a bit more than others. But the big mistake I made with Harrison, I do it's like with some of your characters, but he's a bloody great big know-it-all. He knows so much stuff. I have to do so much damn research for him. He just has so much kind of knowledge. So every single book I have to like really research the kind of topic of the crime, because he's a ritualistic behavioral crime expert. So he knows it all. So I have to know it all as well.
I know, and that's when it gets, you know, the really fun part, you know, sort of when you say, oh, I've been researching such and such today, and we're thinking, oh, I hope the FBI don't see that.
Well, I know, funnily enough, somebody was saying that recently, that about their search. I mean, God, stuff that I search up about, you know, what to do with bodies and all the rest of it. I'm doing mermaids at the moment, so it's not quite so dodgy. Although, having said that, there's some brilliant, you know, online courses you can do as well, where you learn an awful lot. So,
but actually, you know, that's where, I mean, if we think as well, you know, how even when we were at, you know, sort of college, things like that, when we were learning things, how we learn things, you went to the library and you got a book out and you read encyclopedias, or you find information that way. Now you can literally find out. And what amazes me though is the things you can type in and there is an answer. You know, you can type in, you know, I've typed in before, you know, how would you know if someone was found drowned if they were dead before they went into the water?
Oh, it's water in the lungs. That's easy, that one. Yeah.
But then you go and there's all these people discussing it and you think, what? It's crazy.
You go onto some writer sites, which is great, and they're all saying, so if I poisoned that person with so-and-so, would it show up in the autopsies? And you're thinking, are you actually a writer, or are you just knocking off his mouth?
Oh, I know exactly where I'm going into. Yeah, I think the research as well, you know, what I can't do, if I get to something and it's something I don't know, I can't leave it. I can't put an X on it.
I can't do that. Yeah, some say to leave it and come back, but I can't.
I worry that then might completely change the road I go down, you know, with something else.
And I have to be realistic. I don't want to suspend belief totally. Let's be honest. No police officer is like the police officers that we write about, because the poor sods have to do loads of paperwork. There's loads of sitting at desks. There's loads of really boring crap, which nobody would want to read about if it was a crime novel. When I say this to people, I was chatting to somebody who's in the Navy recently, after watching Vigil on, the and he's saying it's not like that. I said, reality, let's be honest, the reality would be deadly dull. So you've got to have some drama in there, and it's the same with all the police things. But however, there has to be an element of reality in it, for me anyway. That's the kind of thing I like to read, and that's the kind of thing I like to write. Whereas fantasy, I should have been a fantasy writer, and I could have just made it all up and not worried about research.
That's a really good point, though, and I think that's that way for a lot of readers. Like, we've got a friend who will, whether it's reading books or watching TV, loads, wide variety of different tastes, but it has to be something that could happen.
Yeah.
Can't take fantasy. I love fantasy. I love witches and werewolves and vampires.
But then witches is kind of, witches are part of our folklore, so they're kind of in there. Vampires, I mean, I loved all the vampire series, and so I do like reading a little bit about, but I can't. But it depends on what the genre is. So if it's a crime book, I can't suspend belief. It really irritates the hell out of me if I'm reading a crime or a thriller and it's set in modern times and it just really is so unrealistic that you just know that wouldn't happen, or the police officer wouldn't do that. The kind of things where they're investigating their brother's death or something, they think, oh, come on,
they've got access to everything.
Conflict of interest would never happen, that sort of stuff. So I think David Gilchrist just said we have some really good resources within the group for SOCO and procedures. I always have a little nose about them. There's people like Graham Bartlett, who helped me with Preacher Boy originally. He looked through that for me, and just things like the ranks of your police officers and stuff.
For me as a reader, I just want that sprinkling of reality. I don't want it to get in the way of a good story, though.
No, because as I say, it would be dull.
Dull. Absolutely. And I think that then you sort of sit and think, Jersey, obviously, Bergerac was huge in the 80s. And they used to say about Bergerac, it's a small island. And at that point, I think we only had about 75,000 people. And, they were saying, really, you've got, like, how many murders can you possibly have?
Midsummer Murders, one little village, and they have the same guy, actually, same actor.
John Nettles.
John Nettles is a bit dodgy, isn't he?
Definitely, the common theme there.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like that. But then, when you do have it within an island, I think there's something, a bit special. When the great thing is, you don't have far to travel. You can't have people just suddenly jumping in a car and driving off out the place to get away from it. It's impossible. They can't do that.
But you're touching on a point there, because setting is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think setting can be very important, which has been a real pain in the arse in the last 2 years for writers, because, of course, most of us haven't been able to travel.
Yeah.
So it's been very difficult. So I would normally sort of like to go and visit somewhere and get the feel of somewhere. But with COVID, especially during lockdown, of course, it was absolutely impossible. So you were having to set it in places where you'd lived, or really using Google.
What I thought was really, really good, because, of course, there was that whole debate from people about, do you want to read about anything that has got a COVID-type world?
Yeah.
Or do you want to even write that? And some people were like, no, not at all. It just didn't happen. But in the Harrison ones, you've started sort of sprinkling through
tiny little bits.
The odd little bit that
just things like when he's in a hotel, just thinking about what he's touching. Yeah, I haven't said it's pandemic. I haven't said it's post-pandemic. No, it is post-pandemic, because obviously he's talking about the remote control in a hotel room. But I've very much kept. I just think we're all going to be so sick of it as well. There are pandemic books coming out, and maybe some people want to read that, but personally I didn't, and I just thought, however, I have to give a nod to it because it has happened. it is kind of part of our lives now, whether we like it or not.
I think it's just that sort of, how it's done. It's like anything, isn't it? And because I don't know, but as a reader, I want to go into those pages, and I just want to be swept away into something else. And that doesn't mean it has to be a different type of place, or it doesn't have to be something that could be in reality. But it's just you're in that particular world, and that world only exists in that book. It's and I think with reading, and what's really, I think, I find as a writer is that you write that book and you create your world, but actually every single person who reads it, they will have a slightly different version of that world.
Oh yeah, and it's really interesting, and that's one of the things I did with Harrison, was I've not actually stated exactly what he looks like purposely, because although we know his mother, who his mother is, we don't know who his father is. So we know that he has a white mother, but we don't know whether his father is black or Asian or white or anything. And I want him to be everybody's hero for that reason.
I watched a movie.
Talking about, oh, sorry, go on.
I watched a movie the other night, and I was watching it. I sent you a message about the movie we were watching, but I was watching it thinking, that's my Harrison.
Yeah, you see, everybody's Harrison will be different. It's like when the vampire series, what's the name of the vampire series?
Anne Rice,
Edward. No, Edward.
No, Twilight.
Twilight. I had an app, so I read that, you see, which is not really my normal book, but I read it and I loved it. And I had my absolutely clear idea of who Edward was, Edward Cullen, and I loved him, and he was gorgeous. And then they made the movies.
And he wasn't Robert Pattinson.
Ew, no, you've just ruined it. That is not my Edward at all. Yeah, did not like that at all. Absolutely not. Then I went, oh, I'd rather have the werewolf. The vampires, the werewolf's better. But yeah, I mean, talking about going into things, because I wish Debs was here, because, we miss her because she's part of one of our 3 legs. But she's just put out a historical fiction novel, which is set in Jersey. So it's a kind of crime element in that, because it was the German occupation of Jersey, an island at war.
That actually, I mean, again, that was one where an island at war. I mean, it's obviously still a very emotive topic. I think she handled that beautifully. For someone who was living here, who has family members who lived through that time. You and I, we're not from Jersey originally, and Deb says, and came out with a book that, and obviously she's written quite a few series, and she finished that book, and again, it's that feeling of, no, what happens next?
I know, I was so in love with the...
So she had to write an epilogue.
Yeah, I know, she did. Yeah, she did have to write an epilogue. That was the thing. All the readers said, yeah, and, you can't just leave them in the middle of this thing.
Oh my goodness, you could say,
I know, and that's the thing. I'd love to have read another book about it. It was,
and that's the thing about the character, isn't it? Because you
it
want to
was
know
totally character, totally immersed. Yeah.
What happened to them next. You can't just leave them there, and you do get that feeling, of them being sort of in reality. I've got a half drafted World War II one set in Jersey, just at the very last months. And basically, I've got these sort of special boat service, or whatever it is, guys, who are coming in to Jersey completely under the radar, because they want to do something. And they've basically been on the north of the island, stuck halfway up a cliff for about 4 years, because that's where I finished. And I keep thinking about it every now and again, thinking, they felt so real to me at the time, and I'm thinking, I've just abandoned those poor guys. I'm going to have to get them out of that at some point.
We've all got unfinished manuscripts in the drawers, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. There's some which I want to pull out again, which I've got 2 or 3 which I turned into TV series, which I need to now turn back into books, like I did with Harrison. So I'll be doing that. And then, what does David say? David says some of the local islands near us would be great for a locked room type mystery. Well, when a storm comes in and you're on Alderney or somewhere, you're stuck.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I've got an idea for a Leclerc book where he would go to Sark.
Sark is the island, of course, where there's no cars.
Yeah.
You get a ferry once a day, twice a day, maybe it goes in.
Yeah.
And it's
no cars. It's a completely dark island.
Yeah, because it's no electricity.
There's no roads. It's horses and carts or bicycles. In fact, we're always saying we have to go for a day trip.
Yes, yeah.
Get our bicycles out, and they've got some beautiful restaurants and things like that, so you can still go and have a nice meal. But I had this idea of them, and very much, David, exactly like a locked room kind of thing, where they go there, something happens, maybe the weather gets worse, they're cut off, they're in Sark, you know, what happens there.
And what does happen there?
Well, that's it. It's too many ideas, isn't it? And I don't have enough time.
Get on with the Witch's Gate book. Leslie wants to read your witchy book as well, so let's get on with the Witch's Gate book. Both Debs and I are asking for that.
Well, I think the great thing about, you know, sort of Jersey as well is that, you know, it's like many, I guess, you know, sort of small communities, small islands. You know, there's a huge witchcraft history, you know, here in the island. And
we were quite good at hanging a few of them, weren't we?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately. And so that was sort of one where I first had that, and you're right, I first had that idea years ago, and it won't go away because the people in it, it's like, well, what sometimes happens with me though is I'm thinking I've got the people and I've got the idea, and it's like they run about my head sometimes for years, just, and then I think, oh,
I might have conversations in my head, and I have to write the conversations down, otherwise I forget them.
Yeah. And it's just that it's like a little vignette, a little snippet, and you think, oh, that happened there, or and you know, with that one, and I've never had this with a book before ever. I know every single thing that happens in that, even if it was a trilogy. I know every single detail. Just have
write it, woman. Write it.
Just have to get it on. Now, if I wrote as quickly as you, it wouldn't be a problem. I
don't write fast enough, unfortunately, but yeah, I'd like to be able to write faster.
5 books in 1 year. And the other two.
Debs is still trying to get in to join us.
Oh, bless her.
She says, really sorry she's not managed to join in, and we're really sorry she's not managed to join in too, because it would be great to have her with us.
I know.
What can we say on Debs' behalf? She is, as we say, a USA Today best-selling author. She's with HarperCollins, as well as being indie published. She's got romance novels, which she writes under
George Troy.
But she also has written crime thriller.
Yeah.
As
Ella
Drummond. Yeah. She's got.
See what I mean about the names? You know, it got really confusing at some point.
Yeah.
And then Debs has written so many books. What we do is, when we're on Facebook talking to each other, to make it easy, we abbreviate, you know, the book. So I'm writing, you know, Fortune's Hostage would be FH, or Blood in the Sand would be Bits. And then Debs has so many different things going on that she'll do something. We're like, what's that? And she'll be like, oh, it's the new one I'm doing for HarperCollins. And we're like, another one? What you know, honestly, very prolific. So I think she's on her 20th.
She's just on her 20th, yeah, which is great. Yeah, which is really, really good. She's doing very well with
that. A way to catch up then.
How many books are you up to? So come on, let's talk. I suppose we're supposed to be talking about what books we've got here. I've got 7 or 8 out now, I think.
I know. Okay, so as Julia Hardy, I've got, can I do that? Fortune's Hostage. That is Regency set, but it's a murder mystery with crime. I wrote a modern day crime thriller with my husband.
Yes, which is very brave of you.
It was very brave, and we're still very happily married.
You are still married. Yes.
Yeah, that's a surprise. And then Blood in the Sand, and I've got 4 of the blood books out: Blood Tithe, Blood in the Rock, and Blood Rights. And the one I'm writing on that just now, the next one is Blood Memory, and that starts off in the 1980s. Jersey.
And when's that coming out?
Oh, that will be sometime next year.
80s Jersey, yeah, hey. Well, we've been talking about Harrison. Whoops, where's the camera there? That's Preacher Boy, which is the first in the series of, how many have I got out? 4 out at the moment. The 5th one comes out.
You're doing the 5th one right now.
So that's Preacher Boy with Harrison. Then there's also the other series, which is Lonely Hearts, which is a female detective. She's actually from Jersey, and she does come to Jersey in the 2nd book, which I've got there. And the 3rd book is coming out early next year. And then Letty keeps saying about she wants witches and she wants realism. Villagers is a standalone I did as well, which is which was actually one of the first books I ever wrote, and I completely rewrote it again. And I did an awful thing. Never ever do this ever. I killed a dog in the book, so I've completely rewritten that, so I haven't killed the dog now.
I can say she did listen to the feedback from Debs and I, which was like,
No, you should never kill a dog.
You but the thing is, as many people as you like, you can't.
I wrote this when I was a lot younger, and I was absolutely shocked at what I'd written, actually.
I know, but you did change it.
Yeah, I changed it. Definitely changed it, yeah. So we're all very prolific and busy, and we're really sorry that Debs wasn't able to join us this evening. And thank you, everybody. Thanks, Leslie, David, Sam, and Caroline for commenting. But I guess that's pretty much it now, because we're at 17:59, so it's time to, well, I've already had one very large gin. Maybe I should just go and have another one.
I think it's definitely time. Thank you very much, everyone. Gwen, thank you very much, and I'll see you on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, we're going to meet up for dinner soon, remember?
Absolutely, yeah, we've got dinner coming as well, and we'll definitely have Debs there.
Well, she better be there, yeah. No catching COVID, Debs.